Just briefly,
Sure.
separately,
Yeah.
is Amos Hochstein and Brett McGurk headed back to the Middle East this week to try to revive ceasefire negotiation? And can you tell us anything about Bill Burns' travel as
So
well?
a couple of things. So following Israel's response in a self-defense against Iran, senior U.S. officials are following up on a range of matters in the region and with Israeli counterparts. Bill Burns will be in Cairo on Thursday to engage with Egyptian counterparts on bilateral matters, as well as the process to secure the release of hostages. CENTCOM Commander General Eric Kurilla is traveling to the region to discuss regional defense and will visit Israel to engage with counterparts and U.S. personnel. And then you asked me about Brett and Amos. So you have two White House officials. They're going to visit Israel on Thursday to engage on a range of issues, including Gaza, Lebanon, hostages, Iran, and border regional matters as well. In all of these engagement, you will see that the U.S. will reaffirm its ironclad commitment to Israel's security, its warning against any further direct military attacks by Iran against Israel, and its support for de-escalation backed by deterrence in the region more broadly. And that's the engagement that you will see from this administration over the next couple of days. Go ahead, Celine.
Thanks, Karine. So did President Biden make a mistake in his comments yesterday?
He clarified what he said. It was very clear what he was trying to do. He was wanting to make sure that what he said was not taken out of context, and he clarified that.
This isn't the first time the White House has had to defend or clarify the president's comments.
Nobody's defending the president himself. This is the president himself wanting to clarify what he said. He wanted to make sure that it was not taken out of context. These are the president's words. Nobody here is defending. We are laying out what the president said himself, and he wanted to clarify that.
So those comments were made as the vice president was speaking about unity at the Ellipse last night. Did the president speak to the vice president before or after that speech?
Well, I think in a gaggle that the vice president did not too long ago, she confirmed that she had a conversation with the president. The president was very proud of the vice president. She gave a historic speech last night, and he certainly wanted to congratulate her.
So that was after the speech.
That was after
and did
the
the
speech.
President make any reference to these remarks or apologize to the vice
What
president?
I can say is I'm not going to get into private discussions here. That's not something that we do from the podium. I'm not going to do that. But the president and the vice president speak regularly. That is not uncommon. She is the vice president. He is the president. So obviously they have direct communications pretty often. And he did have a conversation last night because he was proud of her historic speech, and he wanted to congratulate her. And again, they speak regularly.
And did you or anybody else speak to the president last night to seek clarification by what he meant once realizing it was being taken out of context?
I was in the room when he delivered his remarks last night and during the live stream. And what I can say is he himself wanted to make sure that there was clarity in what he was trying to say. Again, we are talking about hateful rhetoric, a hateful rhetoric that was being said. And the president wanted to be very clear. He also feels, and we've been doing this is nothing new here, for the past more than 3 years. When hateful rhetoric is being said, the president believes it's important to speak to it and call that out. And that's what the president was referring to, a particular comedian from just Saturday night. You all covered this at Madison Square Garden, who was spewing hate against the Puerto Rican community, and the president felt that he needed to say something. At the same time, he wanted to make sure that his words were not taken out of context, and so he himself wanted to make sure that a statement was put out to clarify it. Okay.
One more on this.
Sure.
Was the president reading from a script? It looked like he was reading from notes. Were those comments written out for him in some form?
Okay. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andre.
No, it's okay.
No, finish. I want you to finish your statement. I'm sorry.
It would be useful to know whether there was a prepared remark that he was reading from, and if so, whether that should have been changed or whether he was ad-libbing.
A couple of things. I'm not going to get into specific here. It's not unusual for a president or the vice president or any elected official to have notes in front of them when they're speaking to a crowd or to a group of people. That is not unusual. What I can say is the president wanted to make sure that his words were not being taken out of context, and so he wanted to clarify, and that's what you heard from the president. He was very aware, and I would say I think it's really important that you have a president that cares about clarifying what they said, and that's what you see from this president. He took it upon himself to clarify what he said, and I think that says a lot about who Joe Biden is, that he wanted to make sure it was clear that he was talking about the comedian and the hateful rhetoric that was coming from this comedian just a couple of days ago.
There have been a lot of comparisons made to the Hillary Clinton remark using the word deplorables. Has the president indicated to you any concern that this one comment that he has clarified now could have similar reverberations to that previous comment? I mean, he was certainly active in politics then and was aware of the impact that had.
I'm not going to go back and litigate 2016. I'm just not going to do that from here. He was not speaking about Trump supporters. He was not as a whole. He was not speaking about people who support a different candidate. That is not what he was doing. And he clarified that in his statement last night. That was not his intent. He wanted to be very clear about that, hence, again, why he said he was speaking about comments that were made by the comedian. And let's not forget, we can't forget, what we heard was the demonization of Latinos. That's what we heard of a community. By the way, and I know you all know this, Puerto Ricans are Americans. And he wanted to make sure that we speak out against hateful rhetoric. It's important to do that. Was he talking about Trump supporters? Absolutely not. As a whole, absolutely not.
I just have
Okay.
a
Sure.
question. So the president of who was just here visiting President Biden said of Cyprus said that he thought that there could be some movement on a Lebanon ceasefire within 1 to 2 weeks. He said that he had discussed this matter with President Biden. I wonder if you can give us a sort of an indication of whether you think that is also true, that there could be a ceasefire in Lebanon within 1 to 2 weeks, and if you could just comment on Israel's ban of UNRWA and whether you think that's helpful for the process.
So look, we're going to remain committed to reaching a diplomatic resolution here to end the conflict along the blue line, which will allow Israelis and also Lebanese civilians on both sides to return to their homes. And this is something that we've been pretty consistent about, and we're going to continue to have certainly that commitment to have diplomatic resolution to end what we're seeing along the blue line. Look, and we're also been very consistent as to not negotiating certainly in public. That is not something that we're going to do from here. We're going to certainly be optimistic, and we are committed to that. Just not going to go into any kind of where we are with those conversations, what's happening. We're not going to certainly negotiate out from here. As it relates to, I'm assuming you're speaking about the Knesset vote on UNRWA. So look, certainly we are deeply troubled by that, by this legislation that could shut down UNRWA operations in the West Bank, Gaza, and also East Jerusalem. So we urge the government of Israel, we're having this conversation with the government of Israel to pause implementing this legislation. We urge the government of Israel certainly to ensure UNRWA can effectively carry out its mission and facilitate humanitarian assistance. But we also support steps to strengthen UNRWA as well, in part so that UNRWA's impartiality and neutrality, including to respond to allegations, as you have all covered, to ties to terrorism. But we are certainly deeply troubled by that, and we're continuing to have conversations with the Israeli government. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. First on the comments last night, was the president aware in the moment, as soon as he had made those comments, that they could potentially be misconstrued and be problematic, or was it only after conversations with aides?
I'm not going to get into a process. I think what's important is the president put out a statement and wanted to make sure that he clarified himself clarified what he meant here, and this is something that he wanted to do, and that's what you saw from this president last night. And I think that's important to note. I would also say, and I said this already, and I'll say it again, from day one, this president has always said that he will be president for all Americans. It doesn't matter if you voted for him or not, and that continues to be the case. He was making a particular point, a specific point about a comedian and the hateful rhetoric that was heard by all of us on Sunday, but I'm not going to get into the back and forth. I think what's important to note is that the president himself wanted to clarify this.
There have been a few times when the president has spoken off the cuff and appeared to be off message or had comments that have needed to be walked back or cleaned up. And I'm wondering, going into this final very high stakes stretch of the election, if there's going to be any changes to preparation or format for any of the final events that he's going to be participating in.
The president looks forward to being out there talking to the American people. You heard me talk about yesterday and how important that was, $3 billion in port infrastructure funding that's going to make a difference in 27 states. 11 of them are red states. This is what the president cares about, to deliver for all Americans. And so that was an event, that was a great event. We talked about the $147 million he talked about this, that's going to go to the port. And not just like dealing with infrastructure, but also creating good paying jobs, thousands of good paying jobs. And so the president's going to continue to do that. I don't have any changes to speak to from here. And you saw the president in Pittsburgh just this past weekend as well. And this is more of a campaign. That was a campaign stop, so I'm going to be really mindful, but you saw him talking to laborers and union members, and they were thrilled to see him and very thankful for the work that he's done on behalf of union workers over the past 3+ years. And so that's what you're going to continue to see from the president. It doesn't matter if it's because of the election is a couple of days away. This is what he's going to go do in the next 3 months. And I think the president enjoys being out there, and nothing is going to stop him from doing that.
On foreign policy, just finally, CNN is reporting, according to a high-ranking Iranian source, that Israel's recent attacks on Iran will be met with a definitive and painful response that will likely come before the election on Tuesday. What preparations does the U.S. have underway for
Here's
potential
what I'll say.
response?
Iran should not respond to Israel's retaliation. They should not. If it chooses to do so, if they do, we will support Israel in defending itself. But they should not. They should not respond to Israel's retaliation.